Hi, everybody, and welcome to week number 2. Just a reminder that I'm going to send you some feedback on week 1. It's going to be in a Word document. Please open it up. You'll see comments on the what you've written in each DQ post. In addition, some more summative comments that are pertaining to the grade where you fall in the rubric and some advice moving forward. So I send those out each week, and I'd ask you to please not just look at the grade for your DQ, but also the feedback that I provide in the Word document. Thanks. Also want to move ahead to week 2. The learning outcomes for the week is understand how stakeholder engagement is a dynamic process, not a static one. That's really the theme for the week. Society moves, people move, figuratively and literally, and we need to take that into account. Stakeholders do not stay in place. They evolve, the organization evolves, society evolves. The other learning outcome is articulate how leaders can continually monitor power relations in local context to ensure positive impacts of stakeholder engagement. So just because you tried something 2 years ago and it worked doesn't mean it'll work today. And knowing the context and knowing about those subtle shifts and understanding them and adapting and responding to them goes a long way in terms of engaging stakeholders. So again, the big theme for this week is stakeholder engagement is a dynamic, ever-changing process, not just something you make a plan for and then implement until you retire. I also encourage you, of course, to go into the unit notes for each week. I just highlighted a couple things from the week 2 unit notes. We're addressing the complexities that leaders face when engaging in stakeholder participation. Stakeholders do not stand still, nor does society. Effectively recognize and collaborate with stakeholders in a dynamic, ever-changing environment. So that's just where we are, folks, in education and in other organizations as well. Of course, there are 3 readings from the week, one from Ali, another one from, scrolling up here, Alcanez, Aguardar, and Bretolaza. Sorry, I butchered that one pretty bad. And El Wakil and Anderson. So there's 3 readings. We're not going to get into the course text this week. Ali talks about the moral legitimacy that's established in stakeholder engagement, and all that idea of saying it's a complicated process and the 3 levels, right? Micro, meso, and macro. And it turns out, as Ali says, social context affects the process of stakeholder engagement across all 3 of those. From the Alcanez et al. Article, they talk about trust being established amongst stakeholders, and also how value is broadly distributed amongst stakeholders. So they talk about that a bit. I just looking at my notes here from Al Wakil and Anderson. Stakeholder management is one of the most difficult tasks a project management practitioner must deal with, not just them, but anybody in a leadership position. And they talk about the inherent complexity and unexpectedness of human behavior and that how that plays into stakeholder engagement. So just a couple of things give you a bit of a flavor for the theme for the week, and of course my notes on the course readings can be found in the course news and bulletins as they are each week. Finally, just wanted to talk about the DQs for just a moment. DQ1 in week 2 states, stakeholders have a dynamic nature and it's not always possible to predict human behavior. Complexity plays a significant role in how stakeholder behavior plays out. What can leaders do to remain aware of any subtle changes in the needs of stakeholders? So consider the readings. You can also look externally to these readings, but think about, as a leader and as someone who's trying to engage stakeholders, how do we know where they're at? And how do we do things to make sure that we're up to date and current on what the context is? Because again, as I said a couple minutes ago, what might have worked 2 or 3 years ago may not work today. And how do you know that? And how do you make those decisions? How do you stay on the ground and get a feel for how the context is going? Very important parts of stakeholder engagement. The second DQ question, power is constantly shifting. Some stakeholder groups may be essential to an initiative, whereas other stakeholders may be critical to a different initiative. How can a leader assess which stakeholder groups to pay particular attention to at any given time? So you don't need to consult all stakeholders at all time, depending on the scenario, depending on the initiative, depending on the aim of what you're trying to do. So as per the question, how does a leader figure that out and say to this particular initiative, perhaps it's this, these 2 or 3 stakeholder groups who we really need to focus on, whereas a different initiative, it might be someone else. And of course, the risk with that is you don't want anybody, feeling left out, but it's hard to consult everybody all the time. So I'd like you to put some thought into that. And for both of these, I think they're just ripe for examples from your own practice that you may have experienced as a stakeholder or as someone trying to engage stakeholders. So don't just lean on the theory here. Of course, we want a balance of theory and practice. That's citing the course articles, potentially citing other articles in addition to the course articles, but also bringing in your own personal experiences as well. So have a great week 2, everybody. I'll see you on the DQs as I do each week. And again, please take a look at the feedback from week 1, and away we go. Good luck in week 2.